Hello, franchise friends. I hope you are well. Thank you for joining us. This is Franchise Talk Live, brought to you by the Franchise Hall of Fame. The Franchise Hall of Fame is recognizing and supporting individuals that have made a significant contribution to UK franchising. And our events deliver innovation, insight, and programs to really help franchisors drive growth and prosperity in their franchise networks. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Theo Millward. Hello, Theo. How are you?
Hi, Simon. Yep, doing really, really well. Thank you.
Good for you. And it looks like you're in theatre land at the moment. So
I am in theatre land. I'm backstage on a secret project I can't say too much about, but I've just jumped off stage too.
So you're not pursuing your hobby as buttons in the next pantomime then.
Not just yet.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you very much for joining us, because this is a really important, I guess it's an important subject, and it's on a lot of franchisors' mind about, data. And what we're talking about here specifically is system-wide real-time data. I mean, we've all got KPIs and we've all got numbers, but this is about thinking ahead of the curve, yeah?
It is, absolutely.
Doing that, and I can hear the applause in the background, so we must be doing something right already.
I'm really sorry that the crowd is going wild over this webinar, Simon. So we've obviously done.
It's nothing to do with me, I promise you. But listen, this is live. This is the beauty of it. This is a live stream. You can please come on, tell us who you are, where you're from, and ask any questions as well. But I want to dive into the here and now about real-time system-wide data. And to kick that off, I just want to put a question up for you that's really, for me, will start the ball rolling. And I think, because I agree, it's a fantastic question. Thank you. But what people need to know is you are a franchisor. You own and operate a Swim Time is your franchise. So you're coming at this from the perspective of a franchisor, which is really important. And obviously what's built on from that is Franscape, and we will talk about Franscape a bit later on. But as a franchisor, I mean, was there a specific moment in your journey as a franchisor where you thought, hey, there must be a better way of doing things so we can see what's really happening in the network?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, it's important to set the scene here. So I bought an existing franchise brand off the founders, Barry and Linda Price, back in 2015. A business that had a fantastic pedigree, was BFA members. Had been going, I think, nearly 20 years, something around that length of time. So it's well established. So it's a really strong business. But within about 6 months, I probably realised pretty quickly that there was two things. One, that I felt the product and service wasn't really angling itself correctly to the market needs at the time. But the other side was, to your point, around an absence of clear, actionable data that we could go and support our network on unit level economics, and that just wasn't there. So yeah, it was time to do something different.
Okay, good stuff. I mean, it would be fair to say that you've really grabbed this by the kahunas, haven't you? You're very much a data-driven franchise business. I mean, the logical question for me then, therefore, is how did you bring your franchisees on that journey? Because it wasn't there. I mean, there's obviously some people that bought into the system early on.
Yeah.
How did you do that? Because I mean, that's important for franchisors, isn't it? Because it's all very well, bringing these new initiatives in and everything else, but you've got to be able to implement it and get the franchisees on board.
Absolutely. And look, the change process with any change, whether it's system wide or like with technology, is tricky, right? It is. Look, I think I'm known for being relatively assertive and straightforward. I have a very simple formula, which is I will go to quite a lot of lengths to explain and to take time to set out the background, the reasons, the business case for doing something, and that will involve focus groups, one-on-one conversations, events, materials, FAQs. That process will go around the wash for a decent amount of time. Like a change like this, I'm talking 6-9 months. Really deep listening exercise. But there has to be a point where you make a decision and you go for it. And when that point is made and that process has been exhausted, I am quite clear. Firm and fair is the way I describe it. There's a point where the music has to stop, and as a brand, we make a decision that we are going to innovate and move forward. And if people push back on that, I don't take many prisoners. So, obviously, those kind of things we always want to resolve constructively, with dialogue and all that good stuff. But certainly in our case in Swim Time, we did see some exits, because we got to the point where, you know, the business is going on this journey. We are completely clear why it's important. We can evidence why it's important. And a lot of thought. You're either with us or you're not. And whilst that caused a lot of short-term pain for everyone involved, if I look at where the brand is now and the strength, it was the best thing that could have happened.
Brilliant.
Country.
And is that shaping your recruitment strategy as well? So you're looking for people that are more data-minded, that have got a more of a that's more intuitive around using data to grow their business. Is that impacting on that?
I wouldn't say necessarily on that front. I don't think that's a prerequisite, because I do think it's something that can be trained. But I do think culturally, an individual that is open-minded and just, you know, really sees this as an amazing opportunity to develop a business, then yes, that's the person that we're looking for. I don't think it needs to be data-driven per se, if you know what I mean, from a candidate perspective.
Okay. No, that's fine, because I mean, I know next generation franchisees, they're born with an iPad in their hand, aren't they? You know, it's an important part of that process. And for me, again, for me, it's about, as a franchisor, you're responsible for making sure your franchisee is successful. And with that comes, you've got to stay ahead of the curve, because the danger is if you don't, you become a dinosaur brand. You become the next Blockbusters video, whatever it may be. And I think, this is
exactly
why data and data-driven processes and the way in which you approach things is so important for franchisors.
Absolutely. And look, I'm sure we're going to come into later on, we are at the cusp of the next industrial revolution. I think, that's well documented with AI and whatever. There is no doubt there is a healthy dollop of overhype out there. That's without question.
Yeah.
But you cannot get away from the fundamentals that we are on a journey of seismic change in how Western economies operate. That is happening. And whether you're a franchisor or any other business, we are all going to face a stark choice. We either get on board with that and evolve accordingly, or we don't. And coming back to the change process, if I look at my role as a franchisor with my team, we are custodians of a brand. So our role is in my view, is to create the secret sauce and life ingredients that generate wealth, success, and brand equity for our teams. So if we can't get through that in the right way, then that is why sometimes you have to be robust, because we have to look at the bigger picture and consider everybody's needs as a brand. And I'm a big believer in that for the greater good. It sounds a bit odd maybe, but that's honestly what I think. I think you've got to look at the whole.
Okay, brilliant. Listen, we're live and we're getting some really good traction at the moment, and just want
amazing.
I'm going to put up a question. Here's my Harvey Tuck. He taught me everything I know about exterior illumination. No, Harvey's the guy that set me on my path for live stream, and he's come to the forum. Hello, Harvey. You're very welcome. I love it. But Harvey asked me. We're live. Thank you.
We are live. You need to know who this is who's been irresponsible. It's a very, very senior member of the industry.
Okay.
Very senior member of the industry.
Okay, well, we definitely won't have them on then. Let's go with Harvey's question. Here we go, Theo, because, I mean, it strikes me as this is something quite, it's pretty obvious, but I mean, what is the best way of approaching a data set to get the most relevant information for the business? Absolutely. I mean, there's so much information out there. What do you prioritize?
Brilliant question. So start with the business goals and the business strategy. So every business should have a strategy and a goal. So if I take Swim Time, we are looking at acquiring new swimmers. We have a target of the number of children we want to impact. So then from that, I would then work backwards and look at the key determinators that are going to see that happen. So whether that's acquisition of new customers, whether it's lifetime value, whether it's retention rates, number of pools, whatever it might be, those are then things you can measure. And then obviously with the business intelligence, you will then know what metrics matter to you. So for example, we measure the lifetime value of a client. We know across the network how long that should be. And we can then benchmark that nationally, and then we can benchmark that regionally as well. So it all comes back to the business imperative. Where I see people go wrong and franchisors go wrong is they go the other way. So what they do is they get really excited by something they can measure. And they go, oh my God, I can measure this. And then they sort of go, oh, and then I can do this, and then I can do this, and then I can do this. And it ends up moving apart from the business strategy. And that's where it can become a distraction. So root it back into what are your core goals as a business. And my other lesson would be keep it simple. You can over measure, you can over analyze. Pick one or two key metrics to start with. work those, and only expand when you feel you've got on top of them.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. Scott Anderson's here from the Cat Butler. Hi, Scott. Thanks very much for your question. Let's have a quick look here. Have you ever had a time when you've had to explain a change is coming, but you can't have the dialogue in advance as you need to create the systems and find the data to then roll out for feedback and discussion? I'm trying to think. Sometimes we don't have the what, and I think that we can create as much frustration as oversharing. Yeah, that's a great question. How do you, what do you think about that one, Theo?
It's a really good question. Yeah, and it's a valid point, and it's a dance, right? It's a constant dance. I don't think there's any. I can't give you a golden answer because it's so dependent. But I've been in that situation myself, and sometimes you have to, be building stuff maybe a bit quietly and be selective of how you engage the network. I think one thing I would say is, within your network, you are going to have people that have more of a leaning to maybe data and tech than others, and maybe lean on those. Maybe you've got a franchise advisory council, maybe you've got focus groups. We wouldn't engage all the network at all times in the same way, and we're open with our network about that. We will engage in certain people to stress test ideas before it's rolled out in its entirety. But hey, it's hard, right? There is no golden bullet for that one. It's down to the individuals, and I probably can't give you a simple golden answer. And I feel your pain if you're going through that, because I've been there.
It's one of the things as a franchisor, isn't it? You're responsible. You operate a network, and I think that's part of the mindset shift, isn't it? You've got to get the buy-in. But I guess the best way to get the buy-in is to deliver results and show what difference it makes from a very early stage. And I know you've achieved some fantastic results with your approach, and we will talk about this. But I just want to set this. Well, we're still setting the scene, but I think I want to ask you this question, because system-wide data and it can feel quite abstract. I mean, but for a franchisor that's sitting out there, I mean, what is the first thing that they can do if they adopt this approach? The leadership team, what can they do better once the data is actually live? And share your own experiences with this on that journey that you went through.
Yeah, I think it's for me, it simply comes down to driving unit level economics. We spend a lot of time, and quite rightly so, talking about lots of broader benefits of franchising, of which there are many. But let's call it a spade a spade. These people have invested money and they expect a return. And my general view is, if you want to have a happy network, have decent unit level economics. It's that simple. Most brands that start to have a bit of trouble is probably because that is moving away from, expectations. So to that point, by bringing data into a single source of truth in a way that's really, really straightforward, what we can then do is start to benchmark and understand what the heartbeat is of a network. And I speak to a lot of franchisors who I think believe they know the heartbeat of their network, but I'm not entirely convinced they do. And what I mean by that is that they could look at a data set within 10 to 15 minutes and know exactly the health of that network at the location level, unit level, etc. Now, from a swim time perspective, what we've done, and it's Rachel Brooks, my MD, who leads a lot on this more than I do now. I mean, to be clear, she's been running the business day to day for a number of years, so I can't take any credit for this. This is all her. But she has developed a comprehensive kind of KPI growth strategy that's linked into how these franchisees are coached, managed, and supported. And that is fundamentally driven by those data sets. So again, it comes back to occupancy levels, revenue levels, load factor levels. So we can look at those, and we know, even before maybe a franchisee does, that something's going awry. So a really basic example would be this. Certain data indicators will suggest something's not performing as it should before you see it in the revenue figures. Okay, so for example, if you see the retention level of a client drop at a location, so they're staying less time than they used to be, that is often an indicator that something of the quality is not what it should be. Because we know it's unusual for somebody to leave, 20% earlier than the normal. By using that data, we can get in and support that franchisee earlier, which then reduces the risk of revenue dropping and all the associated problems. So if I was to summarize it, it's that move from reactive to proactive. That's what it does. Excellent. And it's game changing.
Brilliant. Okay, so it's game changing. Tell us some of the results that you've achieved in the business then. So give me some headline standout things that you've achieved.
Swim time's trebled in size, since we went on this journey. To give you an idea, last year, so a mature business, so what we now 20, oh God, I'd probably get this wrong. I think it's 6 years, something like that. It's been in existence. Last year, I think we grew about 19% from a mature business with no franchise sales. That was just growth in an organic network.
Wow.
In a backdrop of what has been quite challenging economic times. I think most of our audience are going to agree with me on this one. Now, there's lots of things that drove that. We've been doing some very clever stuff with marketing, which I can go into if that's a benefit. But regardless, it has been almost the Brailsford method. It's been looking at lots of little parts of the business and how can we just squeeze 5% on each part of the business, and you get those compound gains end to end.
Yeah.
Honestly, I know I sell this, right? But it works. Like, this is why I'm so passionate, because it literally works. Good. I can open my book ups and show you it works.
Good. Well, tell me a bit more about marketing then, because you alluded to that, because that has to be an important part of it. Because if you're looking at the numbers, or if you're, things are not quite right and you need to turn the tap on in certain areas, then what does that look like from a marketing point of view?
Yeah, great question. So there's a danger here we get into too much depth. So I'll give you some top line stuff, and if we want to unpeel the onion a bit, we can. So at a very basic level, we are using automation and artificial intelligence to review the occupancy of our entire estate in real time. Okay, so thousands of classes. If the occupancy of a class falls below a certain parameter, roughly 80%, our system will automatically commence advertising on Google Pay-per-click, MetaSuite, and various other platforms. Those adverts will be tailored specifically to the class they're advertised for. So you'll have, say, a static media, and the location will change, the price might change, etc. When that place is booked, the ad will turn off, and the media spend will then go back into the portfolio to do the next class.
Wow. And
that happens at scale. To put numbers on it, we booked something in the region of, don't quote me with that, looking at the top of my head, but yeah, I think about 3,500-4,000 brand new customers in September. And the average cost for each customer, I think, was £3.60 on Google and around £7 on Meta, which is extraordinarily good value.
So you can turn the tap on automatically and turn it off automatically as well, based on what the data is telling you.
Correct.
Fantastic. And is that something you built yourself? Is that part of Franscape? That's what Franscape does as the offering.
Yeah. Yes and no. So Franscape is the data brain that makes it happen. So the key thing that, in my experience, a lot of franchisors are missing is what we call a single source of truth. So what we mean is one central place where all this data lives. If you don't have that, it's incredibly difficult to do what I've described. It's technically possible, but it's really hard.
Yeah.
If you've got the single source of truth there, then working with advertising partners and other things is relatively straightforward. There's lots of layers to it that make it work, but it's not overly difficult. Without a single source of truth, it's really hard, because you've got to have an aggregation layer that pulls the data, cleans it, and that's messy when you've got to do that.
So in simple terms, what does that look like then? Is that a knowledge base, for a franchisor? Is that a spreadsheet? Is that a database? I mean, what is the physical manifestation of that?
Which bit? How it works, or the outcome?
The single source of knowledge that you talked about.
So that is Franscape. So Franscape has in one platform every information about every payment, every customer, every lesson, every attainment, everything that ever happens in the entire business. Each franchisee operates their business with their part of that data, but all the entire data set is owned by the brand, which means that you can do brand level economics with it. So whether that's, supercharge your support team, whether that's supercharge coaching, whether that's supercharging FranRec, whether that's supercharging marketing, all is possible.
Okay, let's just pick up on something there. The franchise support team, because obviously that's something close to my heart in FranRec, but how do they use the data? How do they build that into their visits with franchisees?
So they've got access to exactly the same data the franchisee does, which means that they can look at it with their expertise. They're obviously trained coaches, trained support people. They can then work with head office to understand data sets before they go to those meetings, and then they can performance manage very well if they need to. It's an incredibly powerful methodology, but it only works, I guess, with a coaching framework that makes the most out of that data. This is a really silly example, but it's a bit like saying, building an engine that works on 99 super when you put crap petrol in it, right? It's the same thing. It only works, the two things work together. So one would have to revise the support methodology to take use of the data, but it won't work without the data, if that sort of makes sense.
Okay, I understand. Another great question coming in. Let's put this one up here. Haley, hello, welcome. Who do you work with as an advertising partner? Forgive me if you mentioned this, I dropped out a few seconds ago.
Yeah, no problem. So we work with a number of partners. We do a lot of work with Ad Plenty, who are a BFA supplier member on the Meta side, which is Insta and Facebook. The Google stuff we largely do in-house, to be honest. So we're finding in our business, nationwide brand campaigns are highly effective. And again, we can get on the rabbit hole with that if you want to, Simon, but we're finding in particular PMAX and some of the AI-driven stuff that Google's now got works really, really well. Just to add one more thing, that might be useful to the audience here. The number one change we did last year that I think made the material difference to this strategy was feeding back into our analytics platform. We use Google Analytics, which I think is most commonly used. Completely accurate to the penny basket information from the customer. So previously, we would have said, if you get me a customer, we just count that as a sale. So, we would measure that a sale happens. Brilliant. So, the end of the journey says, thank you, customer, for booking. Thank you, Simon. The end of the page would say, thank-you. We would count that easy. Okay. What we've done now is doing something called, this is going to get quite technical, really sorry. We're doing something called data layer push. And what data layer push enables us to do is actually send a ton of information to Google, such as who the customer is, where their postcode, for example, what they booked, did they use a discount code, what payment method, how much they spent, etc. All through GDPR consent, I have to make absolutely clear. This is all completely legal. If they don't consent, we don't do it. Okay, but 80% do. That data is then fed into Google. Now, why that matters so much is because Google feasts on data. The more information you give Google about what ad is working, the better it gets. So as Google learns more and more, it might know, that ad really, really worked that I served and got 5 bookings. That other ad I got only got 2 bookings, so I'll do more of the one that does 5. That then starts happening at scale and it compounds. Giving Google that data is like gold dust, absolute gold dust. And it made such a difference to advertising performance. Brilliant. Really, really did.
Super. Excellent. Thank you for that. We've got another question here from Harvey. I've always found that any database system, it's the quality and consistency of the data coming in that drives the relevance and value of the end result. Do you have to spend a lot of time inputting data? Yeah, good question.
Yeah, really good question. So yes, Harvey, depending on how rude you want to be, I'll go with the nice way, garbage in, garbage out. So you're absolutely right. There's no point having a good system with rubbish data in it. So fantastic, excellent point. Second part to your question, no, we don't enter any data, and it's very rare for my franchisees to do. So I appreciate this might not work for every model that's listening to this, but essentially we would expect the customer to do the lifting. And there's some very clever ways of doing that. So our most common sort of trick, for want of a better word, is that we would invite customers to re-register on a platform just so we can make sure we've got their GDPR preferences right. So a piece of housekeeping we all should do under UK data laws. But by virtue of them doing that, they're actually registering on Franscape and therefore making their life a lot easier. So that's one trick to do it. And the other joy with getting the customer to do it, if that fits in your model, to be clear, is the onus is on the customer, right? So if something goes wrong, it's the customer that's made the mistake. Simple as that.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to indulge myself with another question here because this is one I came up. Most franchisors are sitting on huge amounts of data but still making decisions by instinct. What's the single biggest blind spot you see in franchise systems today? And how does Franscape make that blind spot visible in real time?
Yeah, for me, in the people we speak to, it's typically unit level economics. So I speak to plenty of ZORs regularly, and a question I'll often ask is, what's your system sales annually? And you would be shocked, Simon, people you and I know really, really well, who will say, I don't know.
That's crazy.
Or I would need to ring my accountant. Now, that doesn't mean they haven't got a way of getting the data, but they haven't got it at their fingertips, which comes back to the whole reactive versus proactive approach.
Yes.
So that is genuinely the most common one. And I'll be honest, I find that really surprising. Really, really surprising. It's incredibly common, which means if you're watching this call and that's you, don't feel, bad because you're not alone. But if you fix it, it's game changing because suddenly every decision becomes forward looking, not backward looking. and everything we've spoken about so far on the call becomes possible.
Brilliant. Sorry, someone's trying to call me and it's coming up on my screen. But okay, I mean that's really interesting that you highlight that, because unit level economics, we're talking about franchisee validation here, and that fuels everything in franchising. It fuels the next recruits. So if you've got that information, it's very powerful. And what it means is you can weave that into every conversation, because franchising is all about replicating a successful business model. So you can essentially demonstrate the unit level economics to any prospective franchisee. It's uppermost in your thoughts when you're talking to prospects as well.
Absolutely. And if we look at ethical franchising as well, Simon, it's all about openness, transparency, like all those things, those values that I know we all hold dear. For me, that's why not start from an evidential basis. And I'm not knocking people who say, look, you could earn X, Y, Z. Why not be even more profound and say, this territory you're looking at, last 3 years, this is what it earned. These were the ratios, these are the metrics, or one of an equivalent size owned X. Why wouldn't you? It's only going to build your brand equity. It's only going to build your personal credibility if you're in the Franrec space.
Yeah. And was all this very instinctive to you as a franchisor, as the owner of the business, or did you have to really school yourself in this way of thinking, or was it just logical? When you looked at the business and you saw where the gaps were, and you were looking for solutions, was this logic, or did you have to get external support and guidance to get your mindset? It all sounds very logical, and again, very much from a franchisor's perspective. You look at the things that are really important, and I think that's the mistake a lot of people make. There are a lot of people outside of the industry that think they can just layer something on top and make it fit, whereas if you've built it from the inside, being a franchisor, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think it probably was pretty natural to me. I've always wanted to grow my portfolio. I'm very ambitious, and I believe in what we do, and I believe in my team, and I think we've got something really special. And that's why I get quite passionate, and maybe sometimes get a bit of trouble because I'm quite direct to people. But it's only because I care. Ultimately, I know it works, and I personally get a bit frustrated when people say, "No, you're wrong, but give me some evidence." And I get it. People get scared, and it's all a bit scary. And I'm not judging that. I'm really not. I just find it frustrating when people sort of basically say you're wrong, but can't give me evidence why. I might be wrong, but give me something that's evidential why. What I would say, and what I'm finding interesting in my own sort of personal sort of learning and development is, you can't ignore what's happening in the US. You can't ignore private equity and the impact on that. And what I've said to my team, funnily enough, to start this year is, I want to operate our businesses like a private equity firm, with one exception, which is without diluting the culture. I think every way that a private equity firm approaches any business, franchising or otherwise, is conducive to growth. So running the metrics, understanding the business, being data-driven, being insights-driven. If you look at all those fundamental things, I don't particularly like some private equity firms' approach to culture, and that's not something I want to do. But I've said to them, look, if we run like this, we can't go wrong, because it doesn't matter what our future holds. We will have those fundamental understanding of those fundamental frameworks. And one book I would urge, and actually Amrit from Wolfrinch brought me as a present, I'm incredibly grateful for him. I've not told him yet, so surprise, Amrit, here in this live. Thanks, mate. I'm seeing him in Vegas. I need to tell him
Alicia's book, isn't it? Is it Alicia's book?
Yeah, the one on private equity. And
yeah, I've got it somewhere as well. I mean, it is a great book, isn't it? And
it's insane. You need to anyone on here read that book, and it will scare the bejesus out of you, as it should.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, as it should.
There's a point here, isn't there? You're a franchisor. You go into business. Well, most people start a business with the end game in sight, which is to sell it. And data-driven businesses attract that X factor in terms of the valuations. And particularly if you're looking at exiting to private equity companies, for example, that's the one thing they're going to drill down on, is the data, the automation, and everything else. So from a sound business point of view, it makes sense. It makes sense not to ignore it and invest in it.
Yeah, but it goes further than that. If your intention is to hand it down to your family, don't you want
Yeah.
to give them the best framework possible? If your intention is to have this business for 40 years and live an amazing life and have lovely dividends, don't you want it to be powerful as possible?
Yes.
If your joy is to spend less time in a business and more time, doing the things that you love and spending less time being stressed, don't you want to automate processes? Like it's like I can't find any argument at all that says don't go down this path.
It's logical. It's logical. And because you can also, can you stress test the scenario as well? Say, for example, you need to stress test a scenario that is might be impacting your business on a global level or a macroeconomic level, for example. Can you stress test, in terms of marketing and reacting and those sorts of things as well?
Yeah, look, it's obviously hard when you're dealing with a high number of variables. And interestingly, AI is obviously becoming a really interesting weapon on this. But at a very basic level, we do stress test budgets. I'm just working with Rachel at the moment on the next 3-year plan for swim time, for example. And we've got a low, medium, high stress tested budget. We've got inflation factors in there. So we're saying, okay, well, what happens if inflation changes?
Yes.
How does that's the kind of stuff we go to. But you can only do that if you have a fundamentally solid starting base, which is, okay, we know exactly how many kids we're teaching. We know exactly what our revenue is. We know what our load factors are. Okay, we think we can fix this. We think that's exceptional. If you haven't got that foundation to start with, you're stabbing in the dark, ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. Hayley loves your yes, from a metrics point of view, but exactly what you've said around culture. You make a very good point there. The challenge is, do most franchisors know how PE firms run? Great book suggestion.
Thanks, Hayley. And I think the culture thing's a really interesting thing. And I don't know whether I'm going to have the answer right on this, but I hope I'm going to be able to demonstrate in the future that these two things aren't necessarily, mutually exclusive, right? So I think you can have a data-driven, assertive way of building a business and still have a great culture and not be an arse. Now, you might laugh and say, well, I failed miserably, which would be fair cop. I believe that exists. It's hard and it requires a lot of discipline and a lot of strong values.
Yeah.
But I believe it is possible. I don't see any reason why it's not. And a great example, I know they're not as hot as they used to be, John Lewis partnership.
Yeah.
Great example. Now, I know they've gone off the boil a bit. If you look, 10 years ago, they were on an incredible rise, really strong business, well run, partnership model, sharing success with their partners, known for looking after staff.
Yeah.
I believe it's possible. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to do.
I think you're absolutely right. I have to deal with the fallout from, in my core business of recruitment, I have to deal with the fallout for private equity companies taking over where the culture is just squashed and it creates all sorts of problems, and there has to be a happy balance. I want to bring in that AI. Sounds like something like Ali G would say. But in very practical terms, how do you balance AI automation, brand control, and franchisee trust? Because that has to be at the heart of it. Everybody's quite cynical about AI, aren't they? And they sort of frown if they think somebody's drawn their CV up using AI, for example. But from a franchising point of view, how do you balance all that up? With brand control, AI, franchisee trust. Is there a secret sauce?
Look, it's hard, and I'm learning like everyone else is. The speed of which this stuff is moving is frightening, and I probably won't know much more than the audience than I'm in tech, but I can tell you a few basic tips that would be out of the box. So, most of these companies, typically on their paid plans, but just will have data controls built in, and there will be options that say, if I'm using this tool, I want this data to stay only within my space. So number one tip, make sure you've got that right, because if you haven't got that right, all of your IP is going out in the wider world. I don't need to tell you how dangerous that is. The second tip I would say is you should almost have an R&D team, in inverted commas, within your brand. So again, if you think of franchising, we are here to lead the way and not dictate sounds a bit adversarial. I don't mean it like that, but set the tone for our network of franchisees, right? So if we as brand owners don't know what we're doing and don't know what the results are, how on earth can we expect the franchisees to do it? Yeah. So I think it's got to sit at the ZOR first. I think the ZOR has got to say, as a network, whenever we're ready and whenever we've figured it out, we're going to move forward with this. So I give you a really great case in point. We've got an AI conversational booking agent on our Swimtime website. right? That's something we built in-house. We've owned it. We've taken the data risk and we're rolling out for our network, but we're controlling it and ensuring that it's doing what it should do. And that is working really, really well. But it's hard. It's a minefield. And what was true yesterday is not true today and certainly won't be true tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's a really, really, really hard time to be in this sector, but it is an incredible opportunity. And I think those that don't get on it are in deep trouble.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. We're coming to the sort of the crescendo of this, really. I mean, you make a brilliant case for data-driven franchising and how franchisors can do that. But I mean, and Franscape is the result of that. It's the result of you being a franchisor, seeing the problems, putting the solutions together, and now you're sharing that know-how with other franchisor brands, not just in the kids sector, I add. I mean, I know from just looking at your website, you're working with lots of other brands in different sectors as well. But how do you stay ahead of the curve as Franscape? Have you got a real team of boffins behind you that you know are looking at things, experimenting with? Because I know, I mean, I've got so many different AI routines that I use. Every week they get better and better and better. So how do you stay ahead of the curve with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I mean, look, we've got a really decent sized team. I think might even be up to 16, 17 people now we're hiring at the moment. So hiring great people, and that's part of their role. I mean, even internally, we are completely rethinking how we run as a business at the moment and doing lots of experiments, many of which fail, a few succeed, and that's just part of innovation. Personally, because I'm interested in this and I'm passionate about franchising, I guess some of the more sort of like kooky kind of, I wonder if that'll work stuff, I kind of do myself. Partly as a way of learning, but partly out of genuine intrigue. When I get asked to do these things, I don't know how it comes across, but like I genuinely find it interesting and I love talking about it, and I'm passionate about it. I think I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I sort of came on one of these things. I was like, I don't really know Simon, to be honest, or regurgitated a blog article. But is it any different to a franchisor that, I don't know, is in art classes and is a artist at the weekend? Is it any different to that? You've got to practice what you preach, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, the logical thing that springs to mind, my first interaction with Franscape was the booking side of things, and how you, from a customer interface, the ease of which they can book, how they can ask a question and get a response to it. But from a mechanics point of view, as a franchisor, you can collect royalties at source as well. Yeah. Yep. I mean, and that must. Well, it was a game changer, and I'm sure it still is.
It still is, I think. To be honest, it still is. It still is, which does surprise me. To be honest, it does surprise me that it's quite so jaw dropping to some people. I mean that one thing alone. Let's put numbers on it. It probably gave us a free flowing cash injection of probably 60 grand at the time, to give you a rough idea. Because if you think we were billing for MSF termly in arrears, and we went from in advance. I mean, it's just an absolute no-brainer.
No-brainer. Yeah.
And here's the kicker, right? Sorry, Simon. Just one more thing on that. The weird thing is, you would think the franchisees wouldn't like it. The vast majority love it because. This is going to be a weird thing to say, but it's kind of a bit like PAYE, right? When you get no one likes to pay PAYE, so I'll go careful on this, particularly with the current government. But when you get your paycheck, you paid your dues, right? When it comes to your bank, it's nice. You're like, that's mine.
Yes.
It's kind of the same, right? When they get the clearance from us, they're like, MSF's paid, that's mine. Kind of psychologically, it just feels easier to deal with, I think, for some people.
No, I agree. It's logical, isn't it? It's very pragmatic. Okay, so let's. I'm a franchisor. I really like what you said, and I just want to get the ball rolling. How does it work? I mean, we've got a QR code up on the screen, of course, and that will give people some more information. But from a process point of view, what do? Do you go into a franchisor and almost do an audit on their systems and processes and build a bespoke solution? Tell us a bit about how that works.
Yeah, there is kind of like a politician. It does kind of depend, but it always starts with a conversation. So I think the benefit that we've got as being franchisors ourselves is I'd like to think that we are likely to understand what you hypothetically are going through more than anybody else on the market is my view. People might disagree, but we start with the conversation, understand where you are, where the pain point is, what you're trying to do, and then we will try and help you come up with it. And it may be that we're not the right answer for you, and that's absolutely fine. Like, and I've had plenty of conversations where like, look, the problem you've got isn't what we solve. Have a look at this, this, and this. Keep in touch. Feel free to reach out if you want to sound check anything. Yeah. I'm super happy to do that, right?
Yeah.
If it's more of a client fit, we're in the main sort of an off-the-shelf solution. So in theory, you could be moving as quickly as a few weeks. That typically doesn't happen because the size of businesses we work with. But then we do also do custom stuff. It really depends. So we're working with some really big global brands. In sort of, there's one at the moment we're working with. It's in about 8 or 9 countries. They've got some specific requirements. We can have that conversation. It just depends what the brand needs, really, and we go from there.
That's interesting. So if you're a global franchisor, then you can, you don't have to, this could be a global data, real-time data.
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
So you can benchmark performance in different countries, for example. I mean, that's really powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, and we're sort of, as a business, we are moving more. We love all our clients equally, but we are moving more towards the larger clients. Just because the unit economics from our business, it just makes more sense. It's a very expensive business to run. Our server bills are in excess of 100,000 a year alone.
Wow.
It's the computational firepower behind this business is pretty jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
And it's if you're into tech, it's cool, right? It is really cool. There's some really, really bleeding edge stuff happening, which most people wouldn't realise, and that's fine. They don't need to realise.
No. But I mean, from the point of view, the ROI is significant. I mean, you've shared some of the things already. I mean, you must have felt like standing in a cold shower, peeling off £50 notes sometimes. But you can see the benefits, you can see the growth, and you can see how the business has grown. So that's real ROI, isn't it, from a franchisor's point of view?
And it's also the brand, Simon, as well. And this is the bit that we don't always talk about because it's hard to quantify. And I try and stick to quantifiables because I don't really want to end up in sort of snake or salesman territory. But I think you can make a compelling case. And then back to this PE point, right? We talked about multiples earlier in exits. I think these are really healthy things to be talking about. And by the way, just talking about that exit doesn't mean you want to exit. As much as private equity is right every week, by the way, newsflash, I don't really want to exit. So save your breath. But the brand equity that you get from that adds to the multiple, right? So the franchisees feel that the system's getting invested in. It's becoming more cutting edge. It's helping to meet. All of this good stuff we don't really talk about. We talk about your cash flow will move forward probably at least 3 weeks, maybe 12 weeks. You will have better knowledge about your brand. It's layered upon layered, but the brand building ability, and we've seen this with Swim Time, is huge. Huge. You'll see we're seen as like the leaders in our space of this approach, and it pays dividends.
Do you know what I think? The thing that's really been eye-opener for me is when you talked about that marketing, being able to turn on and off the tap automatically. Wow, I mean, that's fantastic. That really is. Okay, listen, Theo, thank you very much. I want to finish off now just with, what does the future hold for Swim Time, Franscape, and you've got Flow as well now, haven't you? Flow is the AI part.
That's it.
Is that right?
Yeah, the AI part of the business. Oh, it's a great question, Simon. I'm going to spend a lot of time on planes this year, a lot of times in meetings and doing all sorts of stuff. We're growing like Billy Ho. So lots and lots of growth. So Franscape's already launched in Australia last year. We'll be launching in North America this year. I'll be at the IFA show in Vegas. I'm going to be in a large breakout session for 90 minutes with a thought leader out there. So we're really looking forward to bringing Brand Britain to the US.
Good.
And just growing like hell. Flow's the really interesting one because you don't need to have Franscape to enjoy Flow, although they work really well together. So we're seeing a lot of traction with that business in particularly the care sector. So with Flow, we can use AI and automation to pretty much automate any process you can think of, from franchise manuals to customer support to product analysis. You name it, we can do it. It's really exciting.
That sounds really true. So, and the important thing is built by people with a franchising mindset. I think that's the important thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And too many times we hear, you get people coming into the industry and layering stuff that don't really understand about franchising. I think that has to be celebrated. That this is coming from a franchising platform. This is coming from a franchisor's mindset who understands the relationship and the and everything else. Theo, listen, thank you very much indeed for that. I think it's tremendously exciting times. And I mean, that's what we're all about here at the Franchise Hall of Fame. It's about recognizing and being ahead of the curve ourselves as well in terms of introducing new programs and things that are going to benefit franchisors. So I would definitely encourage anybody that's interested to scan that QR code and reach out to you. But thank you very much indeed for sharing your journey, and what an exciting journey it is too. And
thanks, Simon.
And yeah, I look forward to hearing some more.
Thanks, buddy. Really appreciate it.
You take care, my friend. All the best. And break a leg whenever you stay in the acting.
Thank you very much.
See you soon.
Sorry about the distraction, but it made it more interesting.
Don't worry. Not a problem. We're live. All the best. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thank you.